Hey guys, so today we're going to start standard 6.63. So you should have a worksheet in front of you that has metallurgy written at the top. The first thing that you're going to do is, without me, you are going to try to unpack this standard on your own. So you will need yellow and you will need blue. I'm going to read the standard to you. Verbs are in yellow, nouns are in blue. And then underneath it, you're going to rewrite the standard in your own words. So your worksheet should look like this. It says unpack the standard. You need yellow and blue. The standard says explain the importance of the discovery of metallurgy in agriculture. And on these lines it says now what does the standard want you to do? I want you to rewrite what the standard is telling you to do in your own words. Okay? Alright, so first of all, what is metallurgy? Well, there's a root word in there that you should recognize, and that root word is, let's see if I can underline it here. That root word is, do you see it? Metal. So that should give you a really big hint. So, according to your textbook, metallurgy is the technology of metals. Okay, so what does that mean? The technology of metals? According to Wills, metallurgy is the understanding and working with metals. You have to understand how a metal works to be able to work with it. You have to know what metals are soft, what metals are hard, how metals will bend, if a certain metal is good for jewelry or if a certain metal is good for weapons. So as a metallurgist, you have to understand what metal does under heat, under pressure, under stress, and then you have to know how to work with it to be able to make the things that you need to make and use the metal that will be best. Okay, so, and I noticed that I just underlined an extra L. Sorry about that. And it won't let me fix it. Maybe it will. No, it won't. Okay, so never mind. Alright, so what does a metallurgist look like? Metallurgist you might know more as this guy right here, because I guarantee you the biggest part of you have seen him. He works at a theme park that you probably really like to go to in the summer. Any guesses? If you guessed Dollywood, you're correct. He is the metallurgist at Dollywood. Lots of times you'll hear a metallurgist called a blacksmith. They work with metals. They make horseshoes, like this one. And they work where it is extremely dangerous and hot, because you can see the flames, the sparks flying, the flames. These guys are wearing protective suits because it is so hot where they're working. You can make horseshoes. Then you can take the horseshoes and make a little crafty thing, a four-leaf clover. You don't have to be old to be a metallurgist or a blacksmith. You can be very young. This is the same kid right here. And some of you might know him because he goes to school here. Metallurgists are also the ones that are responsible for making your jewelry. So girls, those of you who like jewelry and you like really neat stuff, well, you like all this intricate little detail and bends and folds, and yeah, a metallurgist does that. Go figure. So hopefully now, if you listen to this video, then you should be able to answer these questions right here. What is metallurgy? What do they do? And what is another name for a metallurgist? Now we're going to move on to agriculture. What is agriculture? Well, according to Webster's dictionary, it's the science or practice of farming, including cultivation of the soil for the growing of crops and the rearing of animals to provide food, wool, and other products. That's a pretty long definition. You want to hear what Wills's is? Farming. That is what agriculture is. If you work in agriculture, you are more than likely dealing with farming, growing crops, raising animals, providing food, wool, other products. The science or practice of farming. So, agriculture is farming. So let's take a look at some different types of agriculture around the world. Not everyone has farms that look like the farms you see in our region. You probably drive by farms lots of times and you'll see corn growing. You might see tomato plants. cucumbers, pumpkin patches, but not all farms look the same way, and not all farms are farmed the same way. So in this picture, this is a pretty common scene around here. Men that are farming are out on their tractors. This one sometimes is still seen here. People do still use their horses or mules to make rows in their garden to plant their crops, but it's not seen often anymore. This is probably not seen around here. This one, possibly. The only difference is our dirt does not look exactly like the color of this dirt. And you can see that she's got a little patch of garden here, and over here another gardener has a patch of garden. Back here they're working on some, and probably over here. So even though there's some similarities here, this is probably, if I were to ask you if this is our region or another region, I would hope you would say another region. Now, this one right here, where it's really muddy, he's using oxen to plow through the mud to get ready to grow his crops. Well, what crops do you know grow in water? Any guesses? Wheat? Barley? No? Got any other guesses? You know this one. Some of you probably like it. It's rice. This is a rice field. And this is terrace farming. Terrace farming is done on the side of a mountain or the side of a really steep hill. And all of these little places that you see, these little ridges are ridges of dirt, and these little flat areas are where they're growing rice. And when we get to studying China, I'll show you some even cooler pictures of what the terrace farming looks like. So not all farming around the world is exactly the same. It's different. It's not the same as what we do here in our town. But nonetheless, it's still farming. All right, so now you should be able to answer these questions. What is agriculture? What do people do who work in what do people who work in agriculture do, if I can get that out? And what is another name for a person that works in agriculture? So you should have these answered now. All right, let's go back to our slideshow. Now, I think that I mentioned how big a deal this was the other day when we talked about the Neolithic Revolution, but I want to emphasize it again because you are going to see this again on a test. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, cough, cough, if you didn't catch that. All right, the shift from hunter-gatherer to farming is called the Agricultural Revolution. It's also called the Neolithic Revolution. This is a big, big, big deal. And I think you know why. But if you don't, I'm going to tell you again. It is a big deal because if these hunter-gatherers, the hunters were the men, the gatherers were the women, if these hunter-gatherers had not figured out how to farm, we would still be going out and hunting and gathering our food. And I don't know about you, but it is much easier to go to the garden and get some corn or some okra or some tomatoes or cucumbers and take them into the house versus wandering around all over the place trying to find some that are growing wild. So the Agricultural Revolution is a huge shift in time. It's huge. It's a really, really, really big deal. Now at the bottom of your worksheet it said, why was the Agricultural Revolution so important? I want you to finish this sentence, so I have started it for you. The Agricultural Revolution was important because I want a really good, well-written statement that finishes this sentence right here. The Agricultural Revolution was important because. So write me a very well-written finishing up this sentence right here on these blank lines. All right, so Why was the discovery of metallurgy and agriculture both so important? They both were important for a specific reason. Now, I'm going to click on this little globe and we're going to watch a video. And we're both going to hope that this works since I'm recording this lesson for you. Okay, here we go. Didn't work. All right, let's try it again. Aha. And it's not found now. Okay, so let me go find it. I'll be right back. Haha, it took me a few minutes, but I found it. So here we go.
Farming is absolutely revolutionary. When we discovered how to farm, we suddenly increased the ability of the land to support us.
It's the difference between there being only a few million humans on the planet and there being billions of humans on the planet. Most humans alive today subsist on the products of the agricultural revolution, the byproducts of farming. Humans were extremely good at hunting. One of the problems is about 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, most of the large animals that humans were hunting died out. We were simply very successful. In those locations where you no longer had game, you had a choice between dying, moving, or settling down and trying to survive and thrive on plant life. Our ancestors were natural historians in their daily lives, and this was probably behind the domestication of plants. They probably noticed that if they took some of the seeds and rather than eating them, left them on the ground or put them in the compost heaps or the dumps near their camp, they grew. Farming arises in many different places, totally unconnected with each other. And that is the beginning of civilization.
We had to come up with better tools, better ways to build our houses, to protect our land, to make our clothing and so forth. We had new materials to use, we had new plants to grow, and we started to develop organized societies.
You have to have a hierarchical system that's going to have somebody in charge to make sure that things are done. Farmers are invested in land. Inevitably, if there's more than one person farming, this brings them into conflict with one another.
When we moved from hunting and gathering, we stopped being predators and started becoming prey to a great extent.
Warfare kind of follows farming as a natural sequence.
You have stuff to lose. You have a vested interest. And we needed to create other things to protect that.
Farming is the most important ingredient in human civilization.
It is the seed from which everything grows. From the first crop to the notion of property, nation-states, cities, empires. It is the roots, quite literally, of all society.
Okay, so if you were listening, they talked about the domestication of plants. We've talked about the domestication of animals. The domestication of animals is when you tame an animal, and you tame that animal for a use. Nowadays, we have dogs and cats just for pets because we like to have them. But at one time, people tamed dogs for hunting purposes. You tamed horses for the purpose of travel. You tamed cattle for the purposes of meat or milk. You tamed sheep and goats for milk and for wool. So there was purposes in taming those animals, domesticating them. Well, it sounds kind of strange to say that you domesticate a plant I don't mean you go outside and you go, oh, you plant a tree, and you're such a good little tree, you're just so sweet, you're just growing like a little weed, you just keep on growing. If you walked outside and you started talking to your plants that way, people would think you were crazy. The domestication of plants is when early man figured out that as they were walking to a berry bush, and each year when they would go to that berry bush, they would walk that same path, and there were berry bushes growing along that path, they eventually discovered that they were dropping the berries as they went back to their hut or they went back to their home. And they were figuring out that where they dropped those, there were new plants growing. So if they just dropped them along the way and they grew, then what was to say that you couldn't dig up the dirt where you were living and plant them there? That way you could walk outside your hut, you could walk outside your tent, you could walk outside your house, and you could get the products that you needed right there. That is why we have gardens today, because plants were domesticated. We didn't have to go out and look for them anymore. We figured out how to plant them where we wanted them, and then we could grow our crops near us. That way, we could settle in a community, and we didn't have to travel everywhere hunting and gathering. We've now got our food for our gardens, at least. Plant our vegetables. We've at least got that right there in a garden. And we've got our meat there as well if we eat beef. So, they domesticated plants and animals. Okay, when you finish this worksheet, you're going to show it to me, and I'll give you a dojo point, but you have to finish it in class today. All right? Okay, I think we're going to do an activity after this, so I'll let you know on Canvas. See you, bye.